Hey everybody, welcome to the very first ever episode of Mormon Traditionalist podcast. My name is Jaron O'Driscoll and I am going to be your host. Let's get right into this. Episode 1 of any podcast is supposed to be what you go to and look at. It's just going to be a quick and down and dirty. What's this podcast about? Is this something that's going to be worth my time and going to be up my alley? That's exactly what this is going to be. And I'm going to be up front and forward and first and foremost, not waste anybody's time and let you know who this is not for. This is not for what I have found are the two most common categories of LDS based podcasts that are out there. Number one, anti-Mormon podcasts like Mormon Stories, the John DeLynns of the world. Category 2, the Korahor outlets like Fair Mormon. I like to call these guys the one-footers. I'll explain what that means in a minute. But if you fall into one of those two camps, this is not for you. I don't want you. I don't need you. If you want to hate listen, I guess some people like to do that, and hate listen, I guess go for it. Just helps my numbers. But I really don't care to have you on. I don't care to talk to you or have conversations or engage with you. This is for a different demographic. That demographic is members who put the scriptures, the words of the prophets, revelation, all above their worldview, not the other way around. Leave that to the progressive Korahor outlets. That's their deal. This is the Mormon Traditionalist podcast. We're the antithesis to the progressive movement within the church. That means that the Restoration, Joseph Smith, the Book of Mormon are not up for worldly interpretations of men. We take them at face value. That's what we believe as traditionalists. The progressives like your Leonard Arringtons, Sterling McMurrin, Richard Bushman, Fawn Brody, and the folks that buy into their crap are what I call one-footers. That means they have such commitment issues with the gospel that they keep 1 foot in the gospel and 1 foot in the world and philosophies of men. And that has sparked a faith crisis in the church, the likes we have never seen before. Let me give you a quick analogy here to explain what I mean. There's a bunch of people on a boat, okay? They're all ready to go out and do whatever they're going to do, be out on the water, have a good time. They're about ready to shove off, and one guy is standing there and decides to keep 1 foot on the dock and 1 foot in the boat. And everybody else kind of looks at him and are like, "What are you doing?" You know, and he's like, "Oh, I just like this. I want to have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. I just like this. This is enjoyable for me. This is where it's at. It's not going out on the water. It's not going and doing something out on the beach. It's, I just like this. 1 foot on and 1 foot off." And because of that, a couple people say, "Okay, well, this is dumb," and they leave because the boat can't go anywhere if the guy won't make up his mind if he's going to get on or off. So few people leave and they go do something else. They're gone. There's a couple of guys left on the boat still, and one of the guys in the boats is like, "Yay, 1 foot. Those guys left because of you. Why don't you just get in the boat?" And, defensively he says, but I am in the boat. So these last two guys are on the boat and we're going to go with guy 1. So first guy, he's standing there on the edge of the boat. He's over there kind of by 1 foot. And, he's at risk of a couple of things at this point: leaving like the other guys did, or the guy talking him into trying what he's doing, being a 1 footer too. He's like, "This is where it's at, man. This is good. I mean, this isn't weird at all. This isn't bizarre in any way, shape, or form." And, just kind of gaslighting the guy, just, "This is great. This is great. This is awesome. You should try this. This is awesome. This is great." That guy number 1 in that position, he has a decision to make. That used to be me. Let me tell you about me here for just a second. So I grew up in a rural town in Utah. I wasn't necessarily raised into any kind of politics. I did learn two really important things from my dad, which is hard work and personal responsibility. And those kind of shaped my attitude towards life. I also developed a sense of freedom, really caring about freedom, autonomy, independence. I became a very independent person. I didn't really, like I said, didn't really get involved in politics, and wasn't, raised in a home where anybody was a certain political party or have any kind of influence like that. I didn't really get into politics until I got a bit older. But you could say I was conservative, right? Like, had some very conservative values, and leaned that way even before I even knew what that was or what the difference between, the political parties was. So one day I stumble upon a philosophy that kind of takes all of that to the extreme, which is anarchy. Now, before we go any further, I'm not defending anarchism, but you need to understand what it is. The things that have been going on over the last summer, all the riots, the BLM stuff, the quote unquote insurrection at the Capitol. I hear people pointing at those and saying anarchy. That's not really what true anarchism is. You need to understand that to understand why it's so deceptive. This whole philosophy. Anarchism, if you break down the word, it breaks into two words. It's anarchos, which means no rulers. So it's a utopian form of not government. It is the lack thereof. But it's the idea that we don't need rulers, that there are still rules, just no one to enforce them. And I really bought into that philosophy: ultimate freedom, ultimate personal responsibility. And I really got sucked into that for years. Actually, I really identified with that, and it became who I was. It was me, and it was a crucial and key part of my identity at the time. And looking back on it, the scariest part is that I was totally convinced that it was in harmony with the gospel. I did what I see a lot of people doing now. They cherry pick the scriptures. They ignore any context surrounding it. People do this with the things that the prophets and apostles say all the time as well. But then, I'd look at things like 3 Nephi chapter 7, where it talks about, the government was basically abolished. Everybody had split into tribes. The tribes all got along and left each other alone, but they were all still wicked. But I looked at that, and anarchism is very tribal. It's tribalism. And I looked at that and said, look, it works. And, totally ignoring the context and the fact that, they were all evil. But I mean, yeah, my identity was wrapped up in this, and I really thought, this is in tune with the gospel. And one day I was reading Doctrine and Covenants, and not particularly because I was studying it, but more because I was looking for something from Joseph Smith validating that government was bad or something. And I read D&C 134, 6, I believe, and turned my world totally upside down, where Joseph Smith basically denounces anarchism. And I remember I was living in Layton, Utah at the time, and I remember just sitting there in bed reading that, and it just totally turned my world upside down. I had totally wrapped up my identity and my worldview together for years, and I had to make a decision right at that moment, at that point in time. Because you see, I had this thought, this temptation comes to mind, that, I was applying the logic that would apply to everybody else, which is they don't understand what real anarchism is. They think it's riots in the streets and all this stuff. That's not anarchy. Anarchy is a utopian society. And that thought, that temptation came to my mind. And I remember thinking that and immediately going, you know what? If I adopt that view and I start interpreting the scriptures and not taking them at face value, then where does it stop? And I just remember that having to make that decision, and it was a really hard decision. But I didn't want to completely let that worldview go. So, I mean, I came back off it a little bit, and I guess I was maybe more of an anarchist sympathizer. I actually started my own podcast, intertwining, anarchism basically and Mormonism. I actually got into it a little ways. I did about, a dozen or so episodes, and I just felt something just felt wrong. And I had this prompting that just came to me that told me, Jaron, you're becoming a modern day core whore. And I had that thought and that realization, and I was like, oh gosh. And That day I stopped the podcast. I shut it down. I took the podcast down so it couldn't be viewed anymore. And, I had to have a really humbling, moment there where I just decided, I gotta start from scratch here. I gotta do some more listening and learning, about what the truth is. And, so I found, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm lucky enough in my job. I do a lot of driving and I get to consume a lot of audio. And, I started listening to podcasts, and this is when I realized there's not really anybody out there. There's people out there that have good, faithful material, but it's generally like, it's usually set up like you're at church or like you're at at seminary or something. It just feels like super formal and, not as much how gospel, topics relate to us individually every day, and more on a, I don't know what I'm trying to say, a more base level, more, less formal. That's what I'm after. That's the word I'm after. They're all very formal, and that there's nothing wrong with that. They're just not up my alley as much. So I was listening to things that seemed like the platform, was more up my alley, and I was pretty shocked at what I found. It was all these one-footers, all these people that have 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and talking about all these things about Joseph Smith being a money digger and using a peepstone and a hat to translate the Book of Mormon. And, don't worry about trying to reconcile the, things like where the dinosaurs fit in the flood and all these questions where it's just like everybody says, keep them separate. You don't need to try and figure all this out. Just keep them separate. And it was just really bizarre and weird and left me with way more questions than answers. And I just remember I was really confused. And I remember getting down on my knees and taking it to the Lord and just going, I know that He'll tell me the truth of all things if I ask and do it in faith. And I did that, and I prayed, and I just said, Lord, I need to know how all this fits in and how this all works. And I distinctly got the impression that God would give me the answer after I, was patient for a time and after the trial of my faith. And that was good enough for me. I stopped trying to dig into stuff, and I went back to living my life, worried more about just reading the scriptures and doing, the basics rather than trying to worry about all of the worldly philosophy stuff. And the answer finally came one day, and not just a response in the form of the Spirit speaking to me, but actual evidence. And I stumbled upon the website that Rod Meldrum runs, which is bookofmormonevidence.org. And I remember having just some kind of question in my mind, thinking, what is the story behind and the context behind the statement we always hear of even the elect of God will be deceived? And I remember searching that in Google, finding a blog post that he wrote, and that post answered that question beautifully. That led me to the book called Faith Crisis by Hannah and James Stoddard. It's an incredible book. If you're getting into this for the first time, any of this stuff is new to you, definitely the very first number one read you need to do. There's actually two of them. Number one, definitely read that one to get a good idea of what this podcast is going to be about, because that was a major influence on the decision I had to start this. And the answers literally came flooding to me. Like the evidence is all there for everything. From, defending all the terrible things that people say about Joseph Smith, and say they have all this evidence. It's so easy to debunk all of the controversial things that are said about Joseph Smith. All of the Book of Mormon evidence, the idea that, there's no evidence for it. It's because people are looking in the wrong place. The evidence is all out there, but the progressives of the church, or within the church, not the brethren, not the leadership, the members, people at BYU, the intellectuals, ironically, not so ironically, it makes perfect sense to me, but they're all the ones that are pushing these narratives, the things that are leading people away. like looking in the wrong place for evidence for the Book of Mormon and trying to reconcile that Joseph Smith was all these things that he really wasn't, a money digger and all this nonsense. But anyways, I was that guy on the edge of the boat. I could have buckled under pressure to join the crowd like so many are doing now. I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. I'm not special. If I can hang in there to get the answers and not try to go down these terrible rabbit holes, then so can anybody else. The evidence literally is all there. It's all there, and it's all there to be consumed in a way that's safe and where you don't have to go diving down all these holes of reading these anti-Mormon people, their literature, and the one-footers literature, and it's all out there. And I highly recommend going to bookofmormonevidence.org. It's a treasure trove of materials for Mormon traditionalist thinking. You got to be prepared, though, to get a lot of backlash on it. Satan has done a really, really good job of turning people's hearts away from the truth. And he does a really good job of labeling people when they do come across the truth as something terrible, whatever ist at the end that they want to put on it, or conspiracy theorist or uneducated. And a lot of these folks hide behind their degrees and their intellect and look down on us peons like we're just dumb hillbillies that can't understand or don't know things, and we can't be bothered to be taught them even because we're just so below them. So be prepared for that, and you got to understand that you're going to be in the minority of people when you do find the truth. Satan's on a rampage and really attacking the truth in any of those that cling on to it. This brings me to the last guy on the boat. There's one last guy on there, and that's the guy that I'm trying to be like and I want to be like. This guy's the captain. It's his boat, and he goes over and tells one foot to go crap or get off the pot. I don't have time for your nonsense. There's other people on shore, others even, falling off of their boats that need picked up, that want to be picked up. I don't have time for this. It's time for you to choose on or off. Now, look, I get it. I'm being harsh. I'm being direct. I'm certainly not being politically correct, but I've got no damns left to give about that, to be honest. I appreciate the patience that other Mormon traditionalists have for people like this, the Korihors, the one-footers. I really do. I appreciate that. We need that. But there's also a place and time for tough love, and it's desperately needed right now. So now maybe you know a little bit of what you're getting into. Take it or leave it. That's it for this intro episode. I'll see you guys on the next one where we start digging into more of this stuff in depth. And until then, remember, never back down from the truth.